from that one day. I didn't realise it at the time, but that one night out, I went on to lose 10 years of my life to mental illness. 10 years of feeling like that every single day, relentless. Well, the first time I guess I really knew I was different was on holiday in Menorca. I'd been out for a meal with a family and we were walking down the street, and I remember the first time it happened. And then after about 100 metres, I just had this like overwhelming fear that if I didn't go back and touch the lamppost, I thought something bad was going to happen. Everyone saw this confident kid, but what they didn't see is like, you know, the struggles I had walking to school, stepping on rates. My life just totally changed at 21 years old. I went on a night out when I was 21. Strangely, it was just a comment that he made that changed the trajectory of like the next 10 years of my life. It was just to try and get to sleep. Some nights I was just drinking because I thought if I drink then it'll numb the pain, but then it just made it a million times worse. My mind was constantly telling me, you know, you don't belong here, you shouldn't be here. And there was times where there was a smoking area at work and it was like about 7 floors up, and there was so many times I was stood up there just thinking about how I could escape, like get out of this world. The biggest problem with OCD, you know, that is how OCD can really show up. And, you know, the important thing really is I met somebody who literally changed my life, like during those early days, like the only time I could have met somebody really. And I said to her, like, going back to that point briefly about the learning to become comfortable feeling uncomfortable, it was never about the hardest thing. It was always about the little things. It was about living, finding ways to live. And, you know, I've got a picture on my screensaver, and this is like what it really means, like to me.
I'm on a mission to help the world to see success differently. We're sharing the stories of our guests. I hope to inspire those that listen. This is the Different Hats podcast, produced by H2 Productions. I hope you can join us on this journey. I just wanted to take a moment to talk about one of our sponsors, Nostos, an authentic experience of Greece right here in the heart of Hove. In a world brimming with dining options, finding that one place that captivates your palate and heart isn't always easy. It's about more than food. It's the stories, the ambience, the slice of another world. This is the essence of Nostos, an award-winning Greek restaurant. With traditional recipes passed down through generations, each dish promises a story and a piece of heritage. And Nostos is more than just a restaurant. It's a community contributor. Each dining experience supports initiatives close to their heart, from local charities to cultural events, enriching Brighton and Hove's social fabric. They also provide catering services, bringing Greek cuisine to your personal events. For a taste of Greece without leaving town, visit nostos-hove.co.uk. And when you do go, say Sam recommended the feta nests. Oh my God, they are amazing. Okay, welcome to another episode of the podcast. Got the legend, the man that is Mr. Oly Newton with me today. Mate, absolute pleasure to have you on. I heard you talk, what was it, only a month or so ago up at the Evolve event, and I was just mesmerised listening to you talk, and you come off and there was just an instant connection. Some of the stuff you talk about, the alignment with your mission and values was incredible, and I'm just so grateful for you coming down and coming on. I'm looking forward to this one, mate.
I'm grateful to be here, and I think that was probably the best sort of moment I've had coming off the stage. When I saw you, didn't say a word to me, just open arms, give me a massive hug, and I just grateful.
Mate, you done me that day, I'm not going to lie. There's a bit of emotion there. But look, listen, mate, I want to just jump straight in, right? I'm going to kick off, as we always do, with the big question, right? What is success to you? How do you define it?
Oh, I'd probably define it by saying being able to turn the pain I went through into purpose. And by doing so, it's enabled me, I guess, to help others feel like a lot less alone in their own stories and their own journeys. So I think that for me is the success. It's making a bit of a difference in a world that was just so cruel to me for so many years.
Wow. What? Uh, I guess with that in mind, like, go back to a younger version of Ollie. Talk to me about your childhood and growing up, and then getting to that stage, I guess, where, because what would success have looked like to you as a child? What does that?
It's
Do
really
we?
interesting. It's a great question because, like, even like looking back as a kid, I wasn't, like some people are like kids are quite ambitious. They're looking at the future. They're looking forward to what's to come. They know sort of some kids will know what they want to do. And I think back in those days, like in school, it was always like, what do you want to be? Like, and I can tell you something. There was no one was doing the job I was doing really back then. Not in this space anyway. No one was really even talking about the struggles that I went through back then. And it's interesting really looking back and thinking like what, I was just a happy go lucky kid, world at my feet, like just really, really, really lucky, like incredible family, great people around me. And yeah, just life was just really, really good, like really fortunate, like brought up in a family like full of love and just constant like reassurance, always been told that, I was loved and I think that's probably one of the reasons why I guess I am how I am today, down to my mum and dad and my auntie and uncle and my grandparents and everyone that I had around me. We're really fortunate.
Because I talk about that similar with me, like that unconditional love, like how important that is, and I guess like looking at, especially you go into a lot of schools, right, and you share your story and you talk to kids, and how many kids maybe are struggling because they haven't got that foundation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's tough. And, we delivering talks in some schools, and there's kids that wait and speak to that maybe haven't had that same upbringing. Even, kids in my old school growing up, it was hard because I always felt like I had to do more to support them. Like I was always that one person that I guess I wouldn't allow them to be bullied. And there was kids coming in that, were, you know, uniform was out of the sort of lost property. And it was like, my mum always like instilled this in me that, you sort of, no matter who they are, you help people and you support people and you're not nasty to people. And, I probably would have been silly and messed around and stuff in the past, and I've made little tiny mistakes, but I was always that person that sort of didn't allow for anything like bullying and didn't allow for, any wrongdoings. And, I always tried to help everybody. And I think, you look at my friendship circles, like leaving school as well, which we can go into, it's like there was probably 7 or 8 different friendship circles that I was, one of the, I guess the main character, and a lot of them bringing all these groups together and different people together from all different backgrounds. And it was, that I was just within my nature. And I think that was what, my mum was the same, my mum and dad, just community, people, always surrounded by loads of people, just lucky.
What I remember we talked obviously offline yesterday when we sort of met up, and what looking at the stuff that you do now, um, and what I found really, this is why I find it so fascinating about people's childhoods and their upbringing, how much actually the stuff you did at school to help them other people, that you've almost taken that into the career, right? Of
Yeah,
like just wanting to give back, wanting to help people, wanting to make people feel better about themselves, and that support, and knowing that I guess those values that you was instilled in you from a child that you've just taken into your career.
100%. And, even, when I look through, I guess, the darkest period where I lost full control of everything,
Mm,
like I always was trying to help somebody or do something in those times when I couldn't even help myself.
mm,
And I think that might have been one of the reasons, like, I'm still here, and it probably got me through those difficult periods. And knowing that I could always make the difference, even if I couldn't help myself, I could buy someone lunch who might have been homeless, or I could, all these little things that I guess a lot of people do. But for me, it was always about trying to fill a bit of a void, when I felt a little bit empty. And,
mm,
even I guess growing up, I always felt I had to do more. There was always something not quite right about how I was as a kid. Even, you know, from as young as I can remember, like 6, 7 years old, I knew I was really different, like from a 6, 7-year-old kid.
In what way? In what way?
Well, the first time I guess I really knew I was different was on holiday in Menorca. I'd been out for a meal with a family, and we were walking down the street, and I remember the first time it happened, and I sort of touched this lamppost with my right hand, carried on walking. And then after about 100 meters, I just had this like overwhelming fear that if I didn't go back and touch the lamppost, I thought something bad was going to happen to like my family, my mum, my dad. So I ran back as fast as I could, touched the lamppost, and like little me at like 6 years old, like believed that I'd saved everyone's life. And, you know, from as long as I can probably remember, from 6 all the way through my younger years, it was, even though I had this on the, you know, I was able to, I guess I was probably masking a little bit, but like I had this, everyone saw this confident kid, but what they didn't see is like, you know, the struggles I had walking to school, stepping on grates, going back and stepping on grates, and how frustrating it was at times. And I wouldn't go too far as saying it was like debilitating as a young kid, but it was really annoying. It was stressful, and it didn't set me up for the day right. And I was having to do these things, like if I didn't do it, something bad was going to happen to somebody. And on a night, it sort of really crept in. Like within probably 3 months, I'd seen like a film on like monsters, and I was like, I need to check my cupboards for monsters. And it started off quite innocent, just doing this like one check of my bedroom, like check the wardrobe behind the curtain. There was like a little box at the bottom of the bed, and I used to check in there. And I'd get into bed, but then as time went on, I started to do these things but make mistakes. And every time I made a mistake, it would basically like build a further ritual into the following night's routine. And after probably about 4 or 5 months of that, it got to a stage where I was doing 40, 50 checks of my room, thorough checks. And it was taking me some nights an hour and a half just to get into bed. And, you know, I couldn't explain it to anybody because people could hear what was going on. My dad, bless him, he'd put like a laminate flooring in the attic, and he was in the bedroom underneath me. So I'd go downstairs in the morning. I was like, "What the bloody hell are you doing?" He used to say, "It sounds like I'm sleeping under Sheffield Greyhound track," because I was going around my room at 100 miles an hour, but I couldn't explain it. And I think
Did you talk to him about it?
I couldn't, because
really?
everything, like I sort of mentioned it in brief, but it was like I couldn't explain it because of the thoughts that were attached to it. It all reverted back to that same thing. If you don't do it, something bad's going to happen to your mum or dad. So my thought process back then, as I remember it, was if you tell them something bad's going to happen to them. So it was all about saving lives, keeping people alive, and it was pretty scary, to be honest.
And you're saying that thought process, as far back as you can remember,
6 years old, yeah. I've got a picture of the holiday we were on, and I remember it because I remember the exact football shirt I had, and I've got the picture of it, and I'd look at it, and I can almost see where it's an old picture, but it would have been around within either a couple of days before or a couple of days after. And that was the exact time that it all started. I remember it.
But then what was like in school life and stuff like that? Like when you was in school, you'd done all these rituals and stuff. When you was in, and did it impact that daily life, or was it like, oh, I've done them things now, that's okay? Or
it was interesting with that element of stuff, because what I was able to sort of do was leave it almost at the school gates. And, you know, growing up in junior school, I guess, I don't know what they call it over here, like up until you go into like your secondary school. I was just like a real happy-go-lucky lad, you know, really loved by the teachers, cheeky but like fun. And, you know, this is the reason why, you know, a lot of the work I'm doing now, like I talk about this transition from like year 6 into year 7, because I don't think people really understand how big it is for a young person. It isn't just a case of, oh, you're going to big school now, everything's going to be great. It's all of a sudden you go from being this kid who was, you know, happy, funny, cheeky, a little bit, mischievous, to suddenly you're in this big school and you can't behave like that. And you're not really taught not to behave like that. You're sort of encouraged to be you. And then you suddenly, you know, you're stuck in this system that we can go into it, but it's very broken. It's not really built for people like me. it's not built for people, you know, who are, you know, maybe, you know, what I do know now has been ADHD. Like, you know, what I didn't have and what I did leave at the gate was the other side of the other struggles I was facing. But what I guess I took into school was, I always had with me was the ADHD undiagnosed for the majority of it, because the teachers would be speaking to my parents about my behavior. And I went, like I said, I went from being the cheeky kid to then within 3 months of going into secondary school, I was on report. And it was like, why, you're not a naughty boy? Like, what, you know, what's going on? And I was just, I guess, very, very misunderstood. And I struggled to learn like a lot of the kids. I struggled to keep up with the class. Sometimes I'd finish the class before anyone else had even started, because, you know, I might have had a moment where I was, you know, really locked in, and then I could just get through it really rapid, and it was just great. And then other days it was really tough, and I'd be up and around, moving, sat in the corridor, working, having to work, walking around the school. There was classes I wasn't allowed in because I just, you know, I didn't fit that sort of mold of you know, what they expected. And I don't think it was really spoken of back then like it is today. And it's a lot more prevalent now. The world's changed. We're talking about things more. I guess younger people are more exposed to other things that maybe they weren't too, you know, before, which is probably also adding to it. And it's spoken about for the right reasons. It's and kids are, I guess, finally getting that diagnosis and getting that support they really need. But at the same time, they're not supported. Like, it's you know,
Because the system doesn't allow it to be supported, right? Like
100%. Yeah.
I think like you mentioned, and I know again we spoke offline about it, and I talk about it so much on here around the education system and how broken it is, that we go from. And what was interesting listening to you talk yesterday and what you just mentioned there about going from year 6 to 7, you're right. There's that. It's such a big change, right? Not only you know, a lot of kids then starting to come into puberty maybe at that time, so there's a lot of changes going on inside them, but actually then going into an environment that is, like you said, I guess doesn't allow you to be yourself.
100%. Yeah. It's and you know, I've worked with a wonderful school in Leicester, that actually they're in Coventry, when we did a project over there, and they are the first school that I've really seen doing something, I guess, that could potentially change how younger people are supported. They built something called the Bridge, and when you start year 7, you don't go into the big school. You go into a separate part of the school, and then you're sort of like slowly brought into the school over that first year. So you're not just thrown straight in, and you sort of, and it's just so cool. Like, I was there and I was like, this is amazing. It's like they are a part of it, but they're in a separate area, and the Bridge just, you know, gets them into you know, embedded into the culture of the school, like the teaching them without them having all the distractions, and the you know, the older kids probably can wreak a bit of havoc and cause a bit of problems, can't they, for them? So it's like, it's amazing. And some of the things that they were doing there, they had this sort of like motto that was connect before you correct, which is just, if you think about it, it's exactly what we need. Because so often now you've got kids who are turning up to school in maybe a pair of black trainers. Like, I mean, I don't speak a lot about my own children because it's like, it's so raw and it's so real, and we're literally like living it. But, you know, I've got a child who's diagnosed autistic and ADHD. 2 of them who are both diagnosed. One of them's diagnosed ADHD, one of them's autistic ADHD. And this is a diagnosis that have come because of the school telling us, we think he's autistic, we think he's got ADHD, and we agree, and we want to support it. To then him going into school with a pair of black kickers that are trainers version of the kickers because he's got sensory issues and he doesn't want to wear big clumpy shoes, to getting sent home every single day because he's got, you know, they're not proper shoes. And I'm like, do you realize it takes us 3 hours to get him to school, to get him out the door? He's getting bullied at school. You're talking about him not being able to focus. You're talking about ADHD and autism. You're telling us this is what's wrong with him, yet you still want to follow this ridiculous, broken system where it's all right to send a 12-year-old, 13-year-old kid home on his own when no one's there. What world do we actually live in? It's like, it's the most frustrating thing. And this is the reason why I believe this connect before you correct is incredible. And I think about my time in secondary school, and I think about the teachers I had. And there was one teacher in particular, Mr. Kent, who literally stood by me through everything because he saw a different side of me. He wasn't like, why are you in the corridors? He was like, what's happening? What's going on? Are you okay? It wasn't a case of tuck your blazer in or tuck your shirt into, it's undone, or why is your tie not tied to the top? Who cares? Do you know, what difference does it make? Right? They're in school, and it's probably hard enough sometimes to get them into school, these kids. He was always like, look, is there something else we can do? So like for me, like if I was, not allowed in class, I remember not being allowed in Spanish. I was not allowed in French. I wasn't allowed in graphics. I wasn't allowed in art. I was very often not allowed in technology. Anything where I could like maybe pick something up and chuck it, or, anything like that. I was probably just, they wouldn't allow me in it. And, he what he used to do was one of my fondest memories of and my biggest lessons at school was how, when he saw me in the corridor, it was more like, let's find a solution. Let's not create a bigger problem. And he used to take me to the PE department when I was in like year 10, year 11. So like 14, 15 years old. And he'd take me into the PE department, and every lesson that I was, struggling in, I was teaching PE to the younger kids because that was something I was really good at. He found something that was, I was really good at, and he helped me. And, and Mr. Bradshaw, the PE teacher, would always welcome with open arms, like, come and help me out. And I just used to play footy with the kids and, teach them stuff and, stuff that I knew, and added probably a lot of value. And, little things like that, it just doesn't happen. And I saw it like firsthand when I was in that school. I saw a kid walking down the corridor, and, one of the teachers said, "Are you okay?" Rather than, "Why are you not in class? Are you okay?" No, I'm not okay. My mum and dad have had a massive fight last night. He's come home drunk. I've seen him like physically harming my mum. I've had to try and get up in the morning, and I've made it to school because I know I need to make it to school because I want to do better. And it wasn't a case of you need to go back into class because you've had a bad morning. It was the caretaker is, putting the chairs out in the hall. Do you want to go and help him? And then I seen that kid go and put all the chairs out in the hall. And they were having a conversation. Him and an adult were having a conversation about life and about, and I was just like, why aren't we all doing this? Why are we saying, okay, you're in detention? Why are we holding kids back for an hour when, it's a challenge as it is? And that's just one story. It's like, I could tell you so many stories of like stuff that we're going through, even with like my youngest kid. It's been such a challenge. But I just feel like I'm in this space to try and disrupt this educational system that's, in my opinion, is broken. You've got kids who are apparently are too special for mainstream, but the biggest problem we've got is then there's this massive gap where they're too special for mainstream, but they're actually not special enough for specialist education, or it takes a year or 2 years to try and get an actual plan to try and get them into a specialist school. So what do you actually do? I've got a kid who's been at home for 4 months because he's been bullied so badly. They're sending him home when he's wearing the wrong shoes. He doesn't feel like he belongs there. He's autistic. He's ADHD. What do we, what can we really do? Like, it's and there's really very few alternative provisions that, we applied for my middle lad, Charlie, to get into an alternative provision. And there was 1,800 applicants. And there was, for year 10, there was 200 places, but for Charlie, unfortunately, there was 800 applicants, and there was only 6 places for that school. He went through a massive interview process, which was incredible. You learned, it was great learning. The school, probably one of my favourite schools. They're called the 14 Plus Academy in Leeds, where I'm doing loads of mentoring work with, and I couldn't get him in there. It's really tough.
How do we fix it? Because I mentioned to you last night, this is going to be episode 124, right? I've had so many people, and on most of the conversations this subject comes up, I always talk about people's life growing up, how they shaped who they are. We generally talk about education, and I talk about the education system. And I'm quite clear. I don't blame the teachers. I think the teachers are superheroes. Actually, the majority of them, but they're working within a curriculum that's broken.
Yeah.
So if everyone sitting opposite me recognises that there's a problem, say the same similar thing to you, that it's broken, right? What do we? How do we fix it? What's the solution, or where do we start to fix it?
It's so tough, isn't it? Like, I think there's so many. I think the whole sort of what we're taught maybe needs to change. It needs to if we're sort of coming to terms and knowing that there's so many young people that may fall on that spectrum that are neurodivergent. Why are we not exploring things that they are like interested in? Why aren't we exploring, for me, like my son, like I would do anything now if I could, if it was as easy as just pulling him out of school to, he's 14, my 13, nearly 13, my youngest. And he is, very, very into like sort of, he's very creative. He likes taking photos. If I could just, I keep saying, look, if you can learn how to use that camera, I will just pay for you to come with me. Why would I pay another videographer or a photographer when I can pay you? Like, just come with me. And, why aren't kids like, why aren't we focusing on things that they're good at? Why are we always trying to teach a system that, how often do you do algebra now? I don't know, maybe you do. But or how often do you look at things like, geography? You might do that in a job, but like, why aren't we looking, and when they're making the choices and going into whenever it is, like year 9 or whatever, why are they making choices if they do Spanish or French? Why aren't they looking at whether they do photography or even doing something in like videography or gaming or anything that they're interested in? Or, the world's changed, like we need to change with it, but it's not going to be that easy. But it all starts, in my opinion, with the connection. It doesn't have to be anything. It's like that whole connect before you correct. Like, if you can connect with somebody,
Talk to me more about that. Is that more like with the kids going in, and actually, is it that there's environments that create that initial phase rather than that first lesson being about physics or maths or whatever it is, that first lesson is groups of kids sitting around talking, connecting, sharing a story of some kind, or whatever that looks like? Is that
could look like that in that? Yeah, I just mean more from I think the teachers are following it's not the teacher's fault, like you say. I love teachers. My sister's a teacher. But they are stuck in a system that they have to follow. You have to wear uniform. Why do you have to wear uniform? Or why isn't there just like one standard uniform that the whole UK just wear that's just comfortable? Why blazers? Why I did a talk about a month and a half ago in a school. It was roasting. They had to wear a blazer, a shirt and a tie. And there was 300 kids in the room. I was in a t-shirt and I was absolutely sweating. Like, why? What is that actually help? And then when you leave school, who wears a blazer?
It's so strange, isn't it? Like because maybe people would look at it, and I always think, I try and always look from a different point of view. So I go like, why is that in place? And is there because they want to show discipline and they want to maybe encourage, I don't know, structure, maybe. But I think that it's just an archaic way. We'd set people up. That's how you dress, because actually when you go out into the world of work, that's what you've got to look like. The world of work doesn't look like that anymore.
No.
Me and you are turning up with a baseball cap, right? We spoke about it last night. I go to a black tie doing a baseball cap. Who gives a shit? Do you know what I mean? Like, in all honesty, like for me, like the world has changed so much, but the school system hasn't. So exactly that. I think it's really important that teachers will go, it's really important that there's got, and then maybe there's elements of that you look at, some people will talk, that you listen to some people that might talk about doing national service and going into the army, because that gives that structure and discipline, etc.
Yeah.
But for some people that will work, right? But that's for some people. Like you said, there's other people, whether they're neurodivergent or not, that just won't fit into that, don't want that or need that structure in a place. And actually encouraging people, this comes back for me that and I'll reference this so much on the podcast, that the biggest regret of dying, right? The biggest regret, there's a palliative nurse called Bronnie Ware, and she wrote a book called The 5 Regrets of the Dying, right? And the biggest regret of the dying is I've not lived a life true to myself, right? So, but the reason I've put that in, we're circled back, you know, why are we not encouraging kids to find out do the things that light them up? What lights you up? What
Yeah.
do you love doing? Lean into that, not and find out the things that you do that you we're not putting them into this structure. This is what life looks like, and you've got to fit into this mold, and then you're going to go out into the world of work and you're going to fit into this mold, and you're going actually the world is completely different. Find out the things you love that you light you up, whether that is I've always said to my kids, I don't care if you love cleaning and you want to go and sweep the roads. If that lights you, you come to me, Daddy, I'm going to go and wait to get my new broom. I'm going to go and clean. And that lights you up. You go and fill your boots. Do you know what I mean? Whatever it is that do something with passion that lights you up and lean into that. And if we could create a school environment that enables them to do things like that, maybe that's where there's
I massively believe in that. And one of the big things I always say is like, you know, don't feel like you have to be a policeman or a nurse or work in a bank or work in a factory like your parents. Like the world is totally different now. Like no way anyone was doing what I was doing, you know, even probably really 10 years ago. But what's great about one thing I'd love to do is be able to support young people who are maybe going through difficulties, who have been through struggles, or, you know, they're trying to also turn some sort of form of pain into purpose. Like it might have been a family member who they've supported through cancer, and it might be the reason they want to set up their own group to support other people. Like imagine if kids like could leave school, set up a CIC, a community interest company, work similar to a charity, get some funding, build something, a community, follow their passion and their dream. Like, you know, kids want to be footballers, but if they don't make it as a footballer, why can't you set up a football academy as a CIC and help other kids who are also ADHD and build a ADHD football team or an ADHD community or neurodivergent community or a community of people who are overweight or a community of, you know, like slightly older people do? Why aren't we doing stuff that, you know, and that's something that any child could do, and they'd have even less pressure because they'd probably be still living at home. They wouldn't have to go and get a job straight away. They could build something, and by the time they're 18, they could be getting funding in, they could be running stuff that they really care about, you know. And I could just see, I mean, I don't know how easy that would be, you know, if everyone did that, obviously, but I'd like to see, you know, one of the big things that I'd love to see is, you know, on the back of my talks that I see kids who have come to me afterwards and told me about the fact they had an eating disorder, supporting more kids like them or doing something to support them, or they've spoke about the abuse and that they've grown up in and the family household, helping other kids who are like that. Or they might be from another culture, and they might have slightly different beliefs, but they want to break that chain. They want to get more people who are speaking, you know, to speak about these things, you know, within, you know, with their culture, whether that's their religion, you know, all these things, like just break that mold. But like, I think with the uniform stuff, that's frustrating. Like that is something, like going back to that, like I don't think there shouldn't be a uniform. I think there probably should be one. It might just be this school's blue, this school's red. You just wear a jumper and a polo and you can get it from Asda and it's a few quid. Because I think the biggest issue we'd probably face then is the kids, like I remember from school, who really struggled, who were, you know, living out of lost property, would be, what would they wear? Like, and are they then,
it's
just set, they're not going to have new shoes. And I think there should be something, but it doesn't need to be a blazer or a tie, like strangling them or like making them feel uncomfortable. I mean, I never had to wear that, but if I did, it would have drove me mad. Do you know what I mean? So,
and I guess listening to what you're saying there, there's for you going back into those schools and doing those talks that you do and talking about how you do in this way, that actually does it provide a different outlook for those kids? So it provides more opportunity, right? Like we've just highlighted. I think I'll go back. Look, I'm a little bit older than you, but I'll go back to when I was at school. Like, entrepreneurship weren't even a word, let alone I couldn't spell it. I still can't now, but don't know what did that even look like for me to go and run my own business. That wasn't even, I lived in Dagenham, very working class. That was not even a thing. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't an opportunity. Like I said, a lot of, even going to university, there was 2 people out of our entire year that went to university, my wife being one of them, right? And you go like, what does the opportunities there were so different. Whereas now, I think there's loads of jobs that our kids might do that haven't even been invented yet. You know?
Exactly. And I think by the time it gets to them working, then
Yeah.
they might have built, the mad thing about the world now is it's like I reckon the next batch of millionaires, billionaires won't be people who are working in suits and going into big offices. They'll be sat in their pants in a basement building something that with AI, and that is going to be the next batch of millionaires, billionaires. The next person would be potentially just sat there. You know what I mean? And that's how I see it. Like I think it's going to be, or just a young kid who's just set something up, a little idea, a little concept. There'll be kids doing stuff now that are like changing the world. Do you know what I mean?
And the other thing there, like, you mentioned about purpose. You said about obviously with your home journey, turning your pain into purpose. Where does there's a narrative out like as well, or not with the kids in schools. How do we? What am I trying to say? How do we encourage them to try and find that purpose? Is purpose something we've got to find, or is it? And does it come later in life? How young can we be? There's about a million questions in there. Let me ask you one question. How young can you be to find your purpose?
I guess it depends what you've been through. I think that a lot of it comes down to that, but maybe not. Maybe say it was clear sailing for me, then one of the nicest things about sort of that period that I went through, which we'll talk about, and then coming out the other side of that and speaking to people, like, and asking, like, when we've done mini documentaries and stuff, when we've asked old friends about what did you think Oly would be doing when you were at school, and they all would say the same thing. We think he'd be doing something that would make a difference. So like, even when I was at school, even though I always had a purpose, because even though I didn't know what I wanted to do, I was always kind. I was always helping people. I always tried to do things slightly differently. I was taught to do that. And, people would, learn from that, I think. So it's your purpose, I guess. It depends on, because I think that's the difficulty now. It's hard even to get some children out of a bedroom, like, and there's two ways of looking at that. Is it they're lazy, like people want to say they are, or are they just this new breed of kids who actually, like, again, going back to my own kids, like, it frustrates me in some ways where it's like, he just wants to play on his computer all day. Well, it's only like playing with his friends all day, because actually he doesn't communicate very well in real life. He gets bullied at school. When he was at school, he doesn't, it's a struggle for him to communicate. But online, he's another person. So if that's their place and that's a safe space for them, let's encourage it. But let's encourage them to shower and them to bath and to go to bed at a certain time. I mean, they hate me now because I've got this switch. I'm there in the attic and I've got this switch in the little room that I can literally switch off the whole electricity upstairs. So there's actually no way of getting around it, because what was happening is I would take off I'd take stuff off them, like, well, we'd turn the internet off and they'd just tether from their phones and still be up all night. So now, doesn't flip the switch. Good night. Some nights I let them off, but it's a bit harsher for my oldest one because he's a bit older. But like my oldest stepson. But it's
But I guess like so much of what you said there as well. Like, again, is it, and I guess like where I am right now on my journey is, say, midlife crisis, midlife awakening, whatever one we want to go down. But you start asking yourself some big questions when you get to this stage of life, right? And you are trying to look at what your values are as a individual. Again, I'm wondering what it looks like have kids got to go and not worry about what their values are, and ask those questions, who am I, and them type of things. Is that something that has to come later in life after you've gone and lived part of your life? Or is it actually, what does it look like if we did give them the skills and toolkit to be able to answer some of them questions or try and find what those values are, because then when we go out into the world of work, we're doing it based, me and you have both spoke about it, we do it based on, does this align with my values? I'm doing stuff that aligns with my values. I've got a
Staying true
mission.
to yourself, being authentic. But then I look at my friends growing up, and the ones that I'm the closest to now are the ones that always stay true to themselves. Like, it wasn't, oh, I'm going to sample being a Muppet, and do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I think you even know, and it's taught from a young age, and it's difficult in some circumstances for some kids because they won't see, they'll see people getting, mums getting beaten up, or they'll see, they'll be, born into. There was a kid the other day in one of my talks, and I've never, I was so emotional afterwards because I could see him very, very upset all the way through. And he came to me afterwards and he said to me that my dad's going to prison today for 7 years and I forgot to say goodbye. And I'm just like, what? And that same school, right, the moment I walked through that door on that day, 2 of the teachers ran out. They were going, you could not have timed this more perfect. We've had to take it. Less than 24 hours ago, we had a child, on one of our students on the train tracks trying to take his own life. So it's like, there's so much going on in these kids' worlds. Like, I guess that whole connection element of it, rather than not necessarily the connect before you correct, because I believe that's more about understanding kids. But this connection element of it is like, how do we know what's going on with these kids? Like, what life are they living? Like, you've got, growing up, you could have had a group of friends, like, and you're going back to your very happy family. You've got your own bedroom, and then you've got mates. You probably don't even realize it until you probably get to secondary school that actually they're going back and there's 3 of them in one bedroom. They live in a 2-bed house. You don't know, do you? And
It's so hard. Again, I'm always trying to go, talk about these things and go, right, where's the solutions? Rather than go, I don't know how to fix it. I'm trying to go, right, can I have these conversations? We try and, but listening to you talk, there's something. And again, I don't know whether this works or not. I don't know whether this works, but what does it look like when you create those environments where there is sharing circles, there is places where people can, safe spaces, but how do we create that? Because one of the things I mentioned to you about the little lunchbox letters I've done, right, and how that when I spoke to a child psychologist about it, she works with a lot of kids, and actually it's been so difficult to even go into schools now. She's having to go to people's houses because they're not even getting into school, a lot of the kids. So she was saying, I shared with you yesterday about that. Actually, year 6, 7, 8 to a degree, they're okay to sit around and maybe share some feelings or emotions and talk about what they're doing. When you get to year 8, 9, 10,
too cool for school.
Yeah, that they stop. Like, I wonder whether you noticed that in schools, even with your talks, like when people ask you questions or people who are curious about, when does that stop? Is it like that year 9, 10, 11 where they just
it's difficult because they don't want to show any vulnerability. Whereas like year 6 to year 7, that group of transitional kids that I often work with, beautiful. Like, there was talk I did the other month, just as before they broke up. It was like a full day with like 2 separate groups. And, I start to share about my journey, talk about it. And, 4 or 5 of them put their hand up and said, I've got that. I do that. I had to ring the parents, support them, help them get the teacher to help ring the parents and speak to them. They've never told anyone in their life. The first person they've ever spoke to is me about it. Or the whole room, they put their hand up and spoke about it.
Wow.
But there's so many moments where, this whole thing about the power of, like, lived experience, speaking about this storytelling element of it, like how people are much more likely to connect with you when you're sharing something in story format than they would be if you were just teaching them. And that's where we can come in and sort of change that. There's so many stories I could probably tell you. I think the one that always gets me the most was one of the most, I guess, impactful moments I may have had in a school, was when there was a young girl came in to the class late, and I was running like a mentoring program, and there was like 7 girls, and they all knew each other, they're all friends. And this girl was carrying a sandwich. It was gone lunchtime. She looked very pale, very slim. And I opened up, shared a bit of my story for 5 minutes about the journey that I went on when I got a bit older, and the journey I went on when I was a kid. And she was really upset. You could see she was crying. And so I set the rest of the room the challenge to complete the questions. And there was like 3 questions. It was, tell me 3 things you can do when you're struggling. Tell me 2 things. What is it? Tell me 3 things that you struggle with, 2 things you do that can help you, and 1 thing you'd like to overcome in a year. And I said to the girl, "Do you want to come back in the class? Because I know it's a lot." Like she literally, I took her out. She started to break down, and she was like, "I need to tell you something. I've got an eating disorder, but nobody knows. I've never told anybody." And I was like, "So you're telling me for the first time?" I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "Okay." And so nobody knows your parents, or she said, I'm in the care system, been in and out of care. I don't have anyone really to talk to. I've got a partner, my boyfriend, who understands me, but I don't know how to tell him. And my friends are in that room, and they wouldn't know. And I was like, "Well, we can get you some help. We can get you some support. Come back into the class." Sat her down. "If you want to stay here, you can stay." She said, "I want to stay." She didn't do anything. She just filled in the very last question. And I didn't think she was going to say anything. And it went around the room, and she was last. And it was the last question was, tell me 1 thing that you'd like to overcome in a year. And she stood up and she said, she stood up and she said, I'd like my friends to know that I've got an eating disorder.
Right.
And that's like, that's like 1 moment in the space of 45 minutes. I couldn't even tell my missus for a week. I had to wait a week before I told her, because I was in absolute pieces. I was like, this is how important it is, and this is what we can do on a very different level. And like, I'll never forget it. Like, it literally, like, honestly, it's like so honestly, it makes me really emotional even just to think about it. But it's like, that's it. And that's what we see pretty much everywhere we go. Like, went to a school, it was sort of like an international school, and there was a lot of, it was a predominantly Muslim kids in the school. And I did the talk, and afterwards there was like a couple of lads that were a couple of Asian lads that wanted to chat, but they didn't want anyone else to see. And there's obviously barriers culturally. There's all sorts of stuff going on, and that I've become more aware of, and I'm trying to understand. And I'm not an expert on. I don't know. I've got a great person in my team that I can confide in, who really helps me with this stuff. And I'll never forget it, because I talk about some of the thoughts I was having, like, in my talk, which I'm sure we'll talk about shortly. Like the struggles I faced, later in life, and the thoughts I was having were like negative, bad thoughts about hurting people, harming people, cheating, all these things, and you never do. And he turned around to me and he said, he was stuck with thoughts, and it was because he was bullied. Someone had said, "Oh, you're a terrorist," like, and he was like, "Imagine if I am a terrorist." So he started to think, what happens if I really was one? And he turned around to me, and I'll never forget it. He said to me, "Ollie, the only reason why I'm still alive is because it's against my religion to take my life." And I said to him, wow, like, what? And I'm very, and we talk about safeguarding in schools, and something like that would be an immediate, "Oh, we're going to call the family, we're going to speak to the family and talk to them." But there was a white British Muslim who was the safeguard leader of the school. And the way that they deal with safeguarding there is they deal with it internally. They don't tell the parents, because it can be very misunderstood. It can be looked at in different lights. And I'm not saying that's always the case, but it's, to protect the kids, they don't want their parents to know. They don't want people to know. And it's something I'm trying to learn more about and trying to understand. And how do we have more conversations? Because actually, as a culture, they're some of the best, like, the whole family, they'll get together, and it's just beautiful. Why aren't we, why does he feel like he can't talk about it? Why can't he not talk about that one thing? Like, why is that, why is that, where is the barrier there? What is it? And I don't quite get it, but
I guess it's even like, even taking it away from that, just from that culture, just listening to that description, how many kids that when they are struggling, again, don't know how to express their emotions, don't know how to share that. And then again, I know again something we spoke about briefly offline, but along the lines of like, we're both parents, right? We're not given a rule book of what it's to be
No.
a parent and how to deal with it, whether they're going through, gender questioning or neurodiversity or whatever those things are that we are not prepared for. Just being a parent, right? We're not given so, and we only go on the basis of our upbringing and our learned behaviour. So actually, just opening our eyes a little bit as parents to go, like, what skills have I got to be able to give them the best chance that they can and deal with and process their emotions? If I can create more of a space for them to do that, for me, is it that, again, back to this whole thing of how we fix some of the problems, is it that teachers, parents, kids, we all need to be learning how to ultimately when it comes down to brass tacks, it's just about understanding and processing emotion. Just being able to know what that emotion feels like, sit with it, but be able to be in a safe environment that they can share that.
Yeah, not told to just get up, or
Yeah,
not told to
yeah.
you can't cry, we don't cry, or
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
a girl, or you
Yeah,
have to
yeah,
cry.
yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah.
that whole thing is so small, but it can make, I guess, such a big difference.
Yeah.
And looking at parents and kids, and do we think the child's ADHD? Just have a look at the mum and dad.
Yeah.
The majority of the time, you'll
Yeah.
probably know by just looking at the mum and dad what they like.
Yeah.
Because I say to, now it's like, it's absolute, fireworks in our house. My
Yes.
missus is ADHD. I'm ADHD. I'm also very certain I'm autistic, I've been told
Yeah.
by the doctors. Like, I just haven't got the clinical diagnosis, but I don't think you need it with autism. It's different with ADHD. With ADHD, you can get medication. With autism, I think 50% are self-diagnosed. And, my two youngest are, autistic ADHD. One of them's diagnosed autistic ADHD. One of them's ADHD, been told he's also autistic. So it's like, and then you've got my oldest son, and, his missus was like, he's really drunk, he's been sick upstairs. I'm like, he's coming after a night out at 17. I'm like, do you blame him? He's probably hiding in his room. Like, what mayhem in our house, but it's amazing. Like, I wouldn't change it.
Yeah.
But it's
But the fact that even, I guess, like, again, back to the environment that you're creating indoors, that if you talk about your ADHD and your wife does as well, and actually that the kids are aware of that, and then you can all share and talk about them things, like, that's a safe environment, right? Like, even back to the point of having that girl come up to you and talk about her eating disorder, I think by sharing stories, lived experience, as you mentioned, we give other people permission to be able to then share their vulnerabilities.
Yeah, and it doesn't take much. You need like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And then they're in.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they trust you. They trust you more than anyone they've ever trusted.
Yeah.
And you get people waiting every day, every time you do a talk to speak to, or if they're a bit older, they might message on Instagram, and they really understand what you're talking about. And it's like, it's powerful, really. But there was a mad journey to get there, to be honest.
Well, let's if you're okay to talk about that and share that story, and your going to where you got to with OCD and ADHD, and getting to that point and that lowest point. Can you talk us through that leading up to that and that period?
Yeah, so I think, like, leaving school, I was that guy that, like I said, brought everyone together, had huge friendship circles, like multiple friendship circles all over the place in different, I was always bringing people together. And that was the same leaving school. We were very lucky growing up. My mum and dad pretty much raised the majority of our community, because my mum was a school nurse, and my mum was like, I don't want kids getting drunk on the street. So it's like, I'm not buying you any booze, but you can go in our basement and we'll set it up so it's like a bit of a games room and so on. Like, it was great. Right. So, like, on a weekend, there'd be like 50 to 100 kids some weekends, as my brother and sister got older too. And it was just amazing, like, growing up. Like, we're really lucky. And I was like, again, like, I was like, there was obviously issues, and those things were always happening. A couple of little things were starting to creep in. The drink and going out was not helping. I was thankfully never took any drugs, because my mum was a school nurse, and, I listened, and, that could have been a very different story if I did, I believe. But, I listened, and I never did it. And it was, up until the age of 21, I was that guy, like the happy guy, trying to get a little job. I was working sort of in between. I was working in like a bit of sports betting, a bit of banking, doing a few different things. And yeah, my life just totally changed at 21 years old. And it did feel like it was just like after a night out, but there was a lot more, I guess. Probably when you look back, there was probably signs. But I went on a night out when I was 21. We were out celebrating. Somebody had been engaged, and I was in like a bit of a random friendship group, but there was, people who I knew, not as well. One of the lads I was with, he cheated on his partner that night. And, with how I was as a human, like I was really, really disliked that sort of stuff. I hated it. I was like, why would you do that? Like, and we knew the girl, and it was like, nah, you shouldn't do that. And I sort of woke up the next morning annoyed. And strangely, it was just a comment that he made that changed the trajectory of like the next 10 years of my life. I said to him, we met up in the morning, or I think we'd stayed at someone's house. And I said to him, like, why did you do that? And he just turned around to me and he was like, do what? I was like, well, I saw you last night, you cheated. And he turned around to me and it's just this response. He said, well, I don't remember doing it, so it didn't happen. So I went, what? You don't remember doing it? And it was, and for me, it was a strange one because I suddenly, for some reason, whatever was building up, bubbling up inside for me, just latched onto that. And it wasn't about him anymore. It was about me. All of a sudden it was, Ollie, you could have done something then last night or recently. You could have cheated and you would never have known. But imagine if you did. And if you did, you don't belong here. And it just spiraled really quickly. I went from, that guy partying out, going out, to not wanting to go out, deleting everyone off social media, removing people from my phone. Within 3 or 4 weeks, I really wasn't going out, I wasn't going anywhere. And it was just, I was caught up in this cycle of obsessive thoughts of going back through, I'd been in a relationship for a year and I was going back like with a toothpick over every night that I'd been on. And then creating these false memories, like when you spoke to that girl, what happens if you actually didn't speak to her? What happens if you kissed her? And then it became a thought, and then that thought was like, what happens if that was actually real? It didn't. And it started off being about thoughts and cheating and doing things like unlawful, but then everything I was morally against, every little thing, my mind started to make me believe I could be that person. I could watch the news and someone had been attacked and it was like a mile away from my house. I'd be like, you were near there at that time, that could have been you did that. And I'd live like the fear and guilt that was attached to the thought as if I'd physically done these things, and I'd become really, really consumed really quickly. It was like someone was playing like a videotape, them old tapes, rewinding it, playing it again, rewinding it, playing it again, rewinding it, playing it again. Relentless, didn't think of anything else, couldn't think of anything else. And I didn't really realize what was going on, but I was sort of spiraling into, a real state of anxiety, then found myself trapped in a state of depression. And I ended up going, from that one day, I didn't realize it at the time, that one night out, I went on to lose 10 years of my life to mental illness. 10 years of feeling like that every single day, relentless. There was moments of like light coming in, but it was very, very few and far between. Like it might be a week every year, scattered around a day every so often, where I suddenly felt like a little bit better, and then it just come back and get me again. It was just relentless, tiring, and yeah.
How do you function during that period? How do you, like work-wise, how was you getting through the day?
So I was in a weird position with work because around about a month before it all happened, I'd already sort of agreed that that I was potentially looking at an opportunity to move to Spain to work in the sports betting industry over in Gibraltar and like live in Spain. And I thought to myself, like I wasn't sure if I was going to do it, but then all of a sudden I felt I had to escape the relationship because of, imagine if I had cheated. And I thought, if I get away from the relationship, then I was happy. She was a great girl. Like if, friends today anyway, it's not, but it was tough. Like I thought, if I get away, then, I don't have to deal with these thoughts. But I was so wrong. Like I took that opportunity thinking that's good. I tried to show up for work when I was there. they could see straight away things weren't quite right. I was going home on a night, and just to try and get to sleep some nights, I was just drinking, because I thought if I drink, then it'll numb the pain. But then it just made it a million times worse the day after. I was sort of on my own, really, like, if I'm honest, out there. And
What about your family? Was you not able to talk to them
well, I was in
about
a different country, so it was great. I was sort of chatting to my mum and dad. They knew something wasn't right, and I couldn't explain it. I didn't really explain it until I ended up moving back from there, which was probably a year and a half later, when I really broke down and said, look, I can't like do this anymore. I need to tell you what's going on. And it was awful. But whilst I was over there, I was really lucky, because there was a couple of moments where I guess it felt like I was nearing the end of like everything. Like, it was, my mind was constantly telling me, you don't belong here, you shouldn't be here. And there was times where there was a smoking area at work, and it was like about 7 floors up, and I there was so many times I was stood up there just thinking about how I could escape, like get out of this world. But I always had my parents in my mind, like saying, like, can't, just no, you need to keep going. God, it's tough, but it's, and and I don't think I ever quite got to the stage where I was like about to do it. It was always like, just no. I was always strong enough to somehow keep find a little bit of hope in those situations. Like, I couldn't bring myself to do it. And I remember walking home from work, and it was really bad that day, and I'd been up there again on the roof, and it's not a roof like you stand on the roof. It was a smoking area, so it had like it wasn't like stand on the actual roof, but. And I was walking home, and like a lad who I'd trained in Sheffield before we moved over there, he like pulled me to one side, and he was like, just went, "You've changed." And I went, "Have I?" And I knew I had. I was like, "I know. I don't know what to do, and I don't know what to say, and I don't even know what to tell you, because I can't." Because I was scared that what happens if somebody thought that, like, I was a bad person, and I had hurt someone, and I had harmed someone, and it was that bad, like, genuinely, that, the iPhone notes, like, I discovered the iPhone notes as a way of documenting my every single move. So, like, it has a date and time stamp for everything. I'd write notes in my phone about every move that I've made, every person that I've looked at. And I'd go home on a night, and there'd be like 150 notes. And I'd read through them, like, just to reassure myself I wasn't a bad person. The notes would say things like, you just looked at her, you didn't do anything, you didn't hurt her. Or you just looked at her, you didn't cheat, you didn't do anything, you didn't kiss her, you didn't try and do anything unlawful. And I had to read these notes back. It was so debilitating. And thankfully, he pulled me that day to one side, and he turned to me, and I'll never forget it. He went, like, "My missus, she works in the hospital. She's a psychiatrist." I was like, "Really?" He was like, "Yeah, I'm going to send her out to come and see you." Gemma, she was called. And I bumped into her, like, in Sheffield, like, about 2 years ago. And it was like, beautiful. I was like, "You saved me. You literally saved me." Like, and yeah, it makes me emotional to think about it. But she came round to my flat, and she sat me down, and she was like, "Tell me how you're feeling." And I went, I told her, I said, "Look, I'm going through this. I've got these thoughts, and, I'm a bad person. I'm harming people, hurting people. Everything I'm morally against is telling me I could be this person when I know I'm not." And if you think about everything you're morally against, and you can think about quite how horrible it can get, do you know what I mean? Like, and that's why I think, what I was struggling with was probably the biggest killer. And she turned around to me after 5 minutes. She goes, "I know exactly what's wrong with you." And I said, "Tell me what's wrong with me." And she said, "You've got OCD." And I said, "No chance." I said, look at the state of my flat. Does it look like I'm tidying all day?" And she went, "No, it's not just about tidying. It's about more than that. It's about, there's more to it. There's much more to it." She said, "It's one of the most debilitating diseases in the world." And I was like, "Is it?" And I looked into it, and it ranks in the top 10 most debilitating diseases in the world. And that includes, like, disabilities. Do you know what I mean? That includes everything. And she said, "Yeah, you've just got it in a different way to, like, what you think." She said, "Have you ever had any rituals or routines?" And I went, "Yeah." I was like, as a kid, I was literally trapped in rituals and routines. And, it wasn't really until we unearthed a few more things that I realized I was still trapped in rituals and routines, but the thoughts had taken center stage. So I was still doing stuff like going into the cupboard and making my cereal in the morning. I pour my bowl, put the box back, get it out again, pour my bowl, put the box back, get the milk out, put it back, put the milk out, everything I'm doing twice. So like, not on top of all that, because you forget you're doing this because this is way more powerful, or you're stepping on the grate, stepping on them again. So they were all there and they were getting worse and worse and worse. They were all still there. And, you know, I spoke about that struggle I had as a child. And I guess it was a turning point, but it didn't change much. This was like a year and a half into the journey. She told me I had to learn about it. I had to learn more about what it was and what it meant, and listen, find podcasts or find, you know, there was podcasts were quite new back then. And there was like something called the OCD stories. But even that, I couldn't listen to it because it was so triggering. So like I didn't really know what to do. I was trying to learn, but you don't want to be too triggered because it adds more to you, it just feeds and fuels the. And obviously that's what the notes were doing. I was effectively fueling the fire. I was like, you know, it was like pouring petrol on a fire. Actually, all it was doing is making it worse. And the only way you can overcome OCD is if you don't give in and you don't listen to what either your thoughts are saying or the rituals or what you have to do. It's almost like stepping back and realizing actually you don't need to do it.
Okay, I'm just going to say something about one of our sponsors, Riverval. The world of cars, vans and minibuses is often a pain point for many of us. The hassle of finding the right vehicle, let alone looking after it, are all more things to add to our lists as busy people. Riverval's mission is to make motoring manageable, and that's why they provide leasing, purchasing, servicing and vehicle management. So whether you have one family car or a fleet of vans for your business, Riverval are your trusted vehicle supplier. Visit www.riverval.co.uk. Okay, let's jump back to the podcast.
I was so deep in it at that stage and I hadn't spoken about it. And I was stuck like...
How long was that period for?
10 years.
From when you spoke to the psychiatrist?
From there, it would have been 9 years.
And was that the catalyst, like speaking to her, the catalyst to...
I think it was. I think it made me realise I knew what I was going through.
Yeah.
But to be honest, it was almost. It was probably a year and a bit into the journey, probably even longer. You think about all the stuff I had as a child as well. It's almost like you're trying to retrain your brain to like think differently. And nothing changed. I didn't make any drastic changes. It helped to know, but I was still massively in denial, like about that this could be it, because the biggest problem with OCD is every Christmas someone has a Christmas jumper that says obsessive Christmas disorder on it, and you just wouldn't see that for like anything else. Like you wouldn't see that for, you know, Parkinson's or something like that. It's so often trivialized, and even in the media, like there's some real public figures that have been trying to expose it for many years, but the media choose to focus on other things. So like Beckham, for example, if they actually listen to him and they don't just think, oh, the Pepsi can bit, I like that. He likes to line his Pepsi cans up so they're all facing one way, so everyone starts to do it. Or, you know, and you hear the term all the time, I'm a little bit OCD. I'm a little OCD. No, you're not. You're not a little OCD. Like OCD, unless it's debilitating, isn't a thing. Like and wherever I go, whatever I do, the generational stuff, like the parents are the problem still because they're still talking about it. That TV program about obsessive compulsive cleaners made everyone who was clean think they had OCD. You're just clean. Yeah. You just like, you know, we like having a clean house. You don't, if you are like them and you literally do not leave your house and they've got severe OCD and they're stuck tied in all day long looking for every tiny little bit, you've got OCD because it's stopping you living.
Yeah, so I know that a good friend of mine from school, I've known her pretty much as long as I know my wife, like we're still friends, but her mum suffered for exactly that. Like she would just get up and spend pretty much 8 hours a day cleaning herself, hands and stuff in the bathroom.
I want to be really clear on the fact that I'm not saying that people who are clean and that have it, I don't want to, but it just became almost like anybody who was clean.
Yeah,
Not just do it now.
I get it. I get what you're saying. I think like people, you know, that just because you want something in a nice, neat row or neat pile doesn't mean that you've got OCD, right?
Yeah.
But you're saying that to actually have OCD, it's a really debilitating thing. Like you said, if it's impacting your life on a daily basis, that
It
you
has to
can't
have
do.
it has to be debilitating.
Yeah.
Like it has to be impacting you in a negative way. Like if it isn't, it's just a quirk. But because a lot of it revolves around.
But do you think that's the part of the stigma and the narrative around it, is that it is to a degree it's just minimalised because it is just seen as a quirk to a degree?
Yeah, exactly
Like,
that. Yeah, it is. Yeah. And I think, I go into like, even in workplaces, like, oh, I'm just lining my monitor up because I'm a little OCD. And, like, I remember a guy saying to me in Costa once when I was buying a coffee and some breakfast, or they've not lined these up. It's really playing with my OCD. I just looked at him and went, I wish it was that easy. Imagine if it's just as easy as just lining your tea cakes up or a cake up in a certain way. But no, it's not. It's like, it's brutal. And I think because of my personal perspective on this, and Tyson Fury is a brilliant example of someone who struggles severely. And you look at some of his journey, and he's liked now by people, but 7 or 8 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, he was talking about how he didn't like gay people, and he was saying all these homophobic comments. In my mind is telling me, well, your mind's constantly telling you you're something that you're not. And I've had moments where my mind's gone, what happens if you're gay and you want to leave your missus? And I know so many people who have left relationships who I've met through the OCD circles because their mind's telling them get they're gay when they're not. It's nothing against gay people, but it's just they're not actually gay. And their mind's saying you could be that, and it might be to do with the fact that it's religious, and he's probably potentially having thoughts like that could be making him think, well, imagine if I am. And that's maybe why he's saying these things, because he's stuck in this deep depression and having these thoughts he doesn't want to be here. And he's talking about driving his car off the road, but it focuses on everything that you're not. So if your religion and your life is, you're married, your mind could tell you, you've cheated. It could tell you could be gay. It could be, anything against your religion. It could be anything. Do you know what I mean? Just focus on everything you're morally against. The hardest one for me is like, I speak to parents that can't bath their own children because imagine if they did something that accidentally that was, imagine if, they brushed up against me. Imagine if I did that on purpose. Like, imagine if I was a sex offender. So it's everything that you hate. Like, your mind tells you could be that person. And I've spoke to women that can't even bath their own kids, knowing full well that they're not doing anything inappropriate. But your mind tells you that you're everything that you're not. Every single thing that you are not, hurting people, doing things like that. It's like, and these are the things that I can imagine kill people. Because if your mind's telling you that, imagine if you're that. Imagine if you brushed up against you as you walk past you as you're going into the bath. Imagine if you did that on purpose. Like, that's what I've heard. Imagine if you've done that on purpose. But imagine having to live with that. You can't tell anyone that you thought your mind, that people will take that the wrong way. You know what I mean? You can tell a doctor, but how quickly can you get to see a therapist through the NHS? What, 2 years? Maybe, sometimes 18 months. Do you get what I'm saying? So it's like, it's brutal. And I would not be surprised if it's probably one of the biggest killers because, I've been everything that I know I'm not. Every little thing, and we know that actually we are the polar opposite of everything. You're 99.99999% ever likely than anybody in the world to do any of these things because we're already here because our morals are right up here. But it's all about your morals. It's always the people who are very, have high morals and don't do something bad, or they try and do everything right and they try and help everyone, or, it's brutal.
And what I guess someone listening now and they're maybe resonating with what you're saying and going, God, yeah, that's like me. I've had them thoughts. Like, what advice do you give them to go because obviously you went from that 10-year period, you have changed you're
Yeah, a lot.
using this now, right? You've changed that, like you said, you've turned that pain, which I can't even, for someone that's never had OCD, right, and that can't, and I think unless you've experienced, how can you even comprehend what that must be like, a living hell? I guess I can only describe that from what you're describing. I can only imagine that being just like living in a prison, like your
It's like
brain.
you're in a prison. Like exactly what it's like. It's like you are, an example of one of the most difficult ones I went through. And there's tests on the average people having certain intrusive thoughts, and one of the most common ones that people have. When I say common, it's like 25% of males will have had this thought. Like you're walking past someone at a train station and pushing them onto the tracks, or walking past someone at a bus stop and pushing them. And you might be looking at me now thinking, what is he on about, right? But then, 25% of men would have that thought, but they're never going to act on it. It's just a thought. And we all have thoughts. They're passing thoughts. They pass through. The difference with OCD, and this is a real good example because it's happened to me twice, is I've been at the train station, I've walked past somebody, my mind's going to imagine if you push them. I know I've not pushed them. I categorically know I've not pushed them because I've also wrote in my phone 10 times that I did not push that person onto that train track, right? But half an hour later, my mind is going, if that thought is real, you are in trouble. And boom, 3 months later, I'm still thinking about the police are still looking for me. I've killed somebody. I need to go back to the train station and check the CCTV, but I'm too scared because they're just going to catch me and I'm going to get put in prison and I won't be able to see my family. And I've done this incredibly bad thing. And it takes a mixture of things to be, I believe, that deep into it. The fact that I've been struggling at that stage for 4 years, the fact that I was so in the depths of depression that it was easier for my mind to start to believe these things that, even though I never believed a single thing of it, but you feel like you've done it. You live the fear and guilt that's attached to it. It feels like it's actually happened. And that is how OCD can really show up. And, the important thing really is we try and talk more about these feelings because ultimately that's what happened for me. Like it was speaking out, talking to people, and then all of a sudden you realize that actually, you know what, you're not actually the only person who's having this thought. So many people came to me. I spoke to thousands of people when I set up my mental health support page to help people, thinking that it might, again, how do I help people when I'm in such a bad place, right? But it's, they're all saying the same thing. I have them thoughts. I go through those things every time we do a talk. I get it. I've been there. You're not on your own. You're not the only person who's having that thought, but you feel like you are, and you feel like no one's going to believe what you're saying. You feel like no one's even going to want to hear it or understand it. They're going to judge you because the thoughts are so bad. They could be about you're talking about hurting someone or harming someone or all the other stuff I've just touched on before. It's brutal.
So again, someone's listening. What do, like with those them feeling? What's the first step you would say to try and get you on a better path to help get out of where they are? If they're in, like you said, we've described it as a prison, a living hell. What advice do you give someone to take that first step to get out of?
Yeah, so the system's a bit tricky as well because what often happens is and this is why I believe that I lost so much time of my life because I went to the doctors and I'm a literal person, possibly because I'm neurodivergent. But when I'm told to wait, I wait. I don't do anything else. Like if you say you need to wait and it's going to be 2 years, then I'll be waiting for 2 years. When actually my message is don't wait. Like there's incredible resources now. There's a platform called the Hub of Hope that a lad set up in Liverpool that I've been fortunate enough to speak to before, who started off on an Excel spreadsheet, turned out into being the biggest mental health database in the whole of the United Kingdom, where you literally put in your postcode and it brings up, you can narrow the search down. It could be narrow the search down if it's your children who's struggling. I met a guy on my street the other day and he was literally walking around the block and I knew he'd been struggling. I said to him, because his missus had told me, I was like, you okay? I was like, yeah, he needed some peer support. He didn't need doctors. He didn't need to see he didn't feel like he was a man. He was a builder. And I said, have you looked at this app? And we put it in, struggling with anxiety, depression. hit go, boom, there's a Andy's Man Club 400 meters away from our house. Are we going? Like, that's what you need. Like, let's go and be amongst other men who are struggling, you know. And the difficulty is as well with OCD is and the NHS is whenever you put on that wait list, 9 times out of 10 you're going to get CBT. And CBT, like, and this is what I'm very aware of from my own personal experience, but also from doctors and you know, in professional OCD clinicians telling me, it can be really dangerous. Like, it's not always helpful to do that level of sort of you know, exposure and that sort of thing. There's a much better therapy. The gold standard therapy is really hard to find on the NHS, and it's called ERP, and it's exposure response prevention. And you can learn that. There's a book called Brain Lock. I read that book and it literally changed everything for me, because I taught myself the principles of that book when I was out, you know, running, doing the things I do. I was listening to it, repeating it, listening to it. And that helped me more than, you know, the therapy, because I was waiting, it was too long. And then I didn't feel the same way when I got the therapy 2 years later. And then I got it again. It was in another 18 months. And then a year later, I got it again, and it was 24 months again. And it was like 10 years like later, you know. Imagine if they just said to you, like, look, there's an app here that you can find other people who are going through similar things to you. You can find groups that have got, you know, kids are going through eating disorders, or somebody who's going through addiction. And that's what's, I guess, really beautiful about the world now. It's like you've got all these incredible places where you can actually turn to, where there's, you know, all this amazing support that's available. Like, you know, it's there, and it's people. We need people, I think. Yeah. I think people need people. I think people need to know that you're not the only person who's going through that. And that for me is massive. And even medication for OCD, you're going to get put on antidepressants. There's actually no drug that's ever been like specifically created for someone who's got OCD. So you're just going to get treated with the same anxiety disorder based drugs, or you might get given some beta blockers, propanol or something like that. That's going to, what's it do? I don't know, just literally like gives you a little bit of a hit for an hour, and then they're back again.
So sort of, I guess, like, again, people like that, some natural stuff. Obviously, I guess for you, there was that turning point, and I guess the running side of stuff for you.
That was the biggest turning point. Was
that the point where, and what was it at that changed for you then? What was the point of going, I'm going to go and do that, and that's made me feel better? Was there?
Yeah, there was a massive turning point. I ended up going back into the industry, the sports betting industry. I had an opportunity to work for Sky Betting and Gaming. I moved to Leeds from Sheffield, so it wasn't as far. I was still really struggling. Again, I was trying to escape friends. Thought, I don't need to be near people, and if I can be like on my own and just deal with this misery, and hopefully it'll get better one day. And I found I ended up getting a job back in the sports betting industry about 10 years ago now, and it was difficult for the first couple of years, but it was difficult because I met somebody who literally changed my life, like during those early days, like the only time I could have met somebody really. And I said to her, like, don't, makes me emotional, but I said, you don't want anything to do with me. I said, I'm absolutely, I wouldn't use this term now because I'm a mental health professional, but I said, I'm absolutely nuts, stay clear. And I've got these thoughts, and because I told her, all of a sudden she knew about it. I didn't know where we were going, but she knew about it. And and for some reason she just decided that she was going to stick by me. I always sort of joke and I say that when I met her, it was like when you're booking a holiday and you don't know whether to go all inclusive or not. And I went all inclusive, ended up with 3 kids overnight. But my mates, I remember telling them, like, I've got this new girl I'm chatting to, and there's 1 or 2 that stood by me, and I always remember my mate going, "Get away! You don't want kids. You're already struggling. Get away." And I can tell you something. Them boys, like, you know, the youngest Finn was only nearly 2 years old when I met him. And literally they taught me to love in a totally different way. They taught me to live in a totally different way. It makes me so emotional. But and I always say in my talks that, like, when you feel like you can't go on, but a child swings past you on one of the light fittings, all of a sudden, like, it sort of suddenly feels like everything's okay. And a mixture between the mother and the kids and them, you know, coming into my life at the right time, that changed a lot for me. That changed, like, the trajectory of, like, the fact that, you know, maybe I can love somebody again. Maybe someone will love me and see me for who I am. And that's what she taught me. And it was so difficult because the hardest thing about OCD is relationship OCD. Like, it's called ROCD, and OCD hates relationships. So for that first couple of years of our relationship, it was really, really hard. Like, there was periods where I had to say to my new partner that I can't kiss you because my mind is telling me you're someone else and I'm cheating. And there was months and months where I couldn't give her any physical, like, I couldn't give her a kiss, I couldn't give her a hug, because my mind was saying you're cheating, even though it was her. It wasn't cheating. I was with my missus. It was thinking about the thoughts of, like, when I've been out and about in the streets and I've bumped into people, or, you know, when I've been walking around and, like, you know, day to day, like, my mind was saying it could be, you know, you could have done something, and playing these thoughts that I was writing in my phone over and over and over and over. And the funny story as well, like the hat as well, is like the part of the journey. It's like, I always say it's like you know, when I was struggling, I used to have the hat over my eyes. So I didn't look at anybody, because as soon as I looked at somebody, my mind was be like, you've done something. So I used to have it over my eyes and I just used to look at the floor. And then as I've sort of grown back into to who I am, it's always stayed with me. Like, it's always been a part of, it's like it's like the Harry Potter's invisible cloak. I feel like people can't see me, but, like, and I feel unstoppable when I've got my hat on. There's not a living hair follicle underneath it. But it's been a massive
Go to the
part.
same place,
Yeah,
eh?
it's a part of the journey. Yeah, and, you know, it was, I guess, that was real tough that first couple of years. And I was in that job, I was trying to hold it down. I was going off sick, pretending I had stomach ache, but I just couldn't work. And I remember, like, going into work one day and the manager put his hand on my shoulder, came up behind me, he made me go in, and he turned to me and he said, "I'm worried about you." And I said, "I'm worried about myself, mate." And he said, "What do you mean?" I said, "I've been stuck like this for 10 years. And I burst into tears, and it's like, get into a room and start chatting." And yeah, and this was the first point that I knew this business were going to support me, because they said to me, "We really like you and we want to help you." They said, "Take 3 months off if you need to, up to 3 months. We can pay you. And, you know, we can get you some support. We can get you some therapy. We can get you some help." And I was just like, what? And I was like, is this a good idea? Because I was always believed in my mind that I was trying to build structure and routine. And I thought, you take me out of that structure and routine, what am I going to do? Anyway, that next morning I woke up and I'd been to the doctor. The doctor agreed, sign me off for a month, with the plan to go back after a month to get signed off probably again for another month. And I did end up getting signed off for 3 months, and taking their advice. And I woke up the next morning, boiling hot outside. I'd wake up, it was like 10 in the morning, like 8 in the morning some days, and I wouldn't open my eyes till 1 or 2 in the afternoon, because as soon as I opened my eye, I knew I had to start again, this whole process of, like, struggle. And I could hear my kids, like, out and about, you know, playing, like, I could hear them around going to school, and I couldn't even open my eyes for them. It was that bad, you know, that initial period. And that day wasn't too dissimilar, but I think I'd been up from about 7, but I opened my eyes at about 10. And I was just like, I need to do something. Like, I don't know what it was, but I went into my cupboard. I pulled out some old gym kit that I hadn't really worn for probably like 10 years, some old trainers. And I just left the house. I started to walk a little bit, and then I started to run. And then I started to walk and run and walk and run. And I honestly believe that split decision, I was never a runner, I hated running. I honestly believe that decision I made that day literally saved my life, changed my life, because, you know, like, I probably ran 5 kilometers, running and walking, 40 minutes probably, ish. And when I stopped, like, for the first time in 10 years, the thoughts stopped. It lasted 5 minutes, but I absolutely lived for that feeling. And from that day on, it was just every day building it up, building it up, building it up. And then all of a sudden I was running 100K a week, 120K a week. You know, I was rebuilding in some respects, because what I was doing is that the OCD and the thoughts whilst I was running was tough. It was hard. It wasn't getting better. But when I stopped, it stopped, and I lived for that feeling. And, you know, some days, like I said, it lasted 5 minutes. The further I ran, might last an hour. It was like the thoughts were chasing me. And the further I ran, the easier it got. And some days, Matt, I'm living Leeds. My missus would be ringing me. She's like, before she could track me, which is a nightmare. But she used to be like, where are you? You've been gone hours. I'm like, I'm in Bradford. I'll be back in 2 hours. She's like, what? I said, I'm about 20 kilometers away. How long have you been running for? I'm on like 25K. She's like, what? So what? 5 hours? What are you doing? And, you know, she somehow was able to allow me to sort of somehow put all this into our lives. And she understands now that every day I wake up and I go for a run. I've done it now, for just over 8 years. At 7 years, when I looked, I'd averaged 10K a day for 7 years. This last year, I've ran every day, but I'll have probably dropped because I had some issues with nerves in my back. So I haven't been running sort of the longer distances. But, you know, I was able to, I guess, piece my life back together in some ways through running. And what running did for me was running gave me, like, it allowed me to build this community online, build a bit of confidence again. It's difficult to explain. I helped thousands of people through the running page, and I turned it into a CIC, and then I was able to give out like trainers and kit to people and put them on plans who were struggling just like me, and get them from never running to, you know, up to running like half marathons and things like that. And it was just amazing. Like, I was like, this is so good. But I was really socially anxious. So it was like the running was incredible. And it gave me these moments to think about the future. It gave me these moments to propose to my partner, which I couldn't have done. You know, it gave me, realistically, it got me through the wedding because I ran all night. But it wasn't the best day as like I would have hoped. It was a beautiful day, and people who were there would have said this is the best day. But for us, it was hard because, you know, what they didn't realise is I ran 40 odd kilometres in the night just to try and get to the altar, because of the thoughts that I was having. But it gave me the chance to get to the altar. So you've got to be grateful for that, right? So running was a key. A big part. I think the real turning point for me was probably 3 years into the running, that's when things really changed, because I read a quote in a book, and it was about learning to become comfortable feeling uncomfortable. And I said to my missus, I said, this is what I need to do. She was like, what are you on about now? I was just like, this is exactly what I need to do. And she was like, what do you mean? I was like, well, I'm thinking, like, I'm not living it. I've got the running, it helps me, it gets me through each day, but I can't go out and see my mates, can't be amongst people. You know, I can't do, you know, like the things I used to enjoy. Still really socially anxious. And she said, well, what's your idea? And we sort of came up with this idea that if I could overcome the most difficult thing, that I found the most difficult thing in that moment and throughout my whole life, then maybe I'll be able to do all the little things that people take for granted, like the just going out and seeing your friends. And we sat down for 5-10 minutes. We chatted about the things that I found the hardest, and it all boiled down to one thing. And you can probably guess what it is: speaking in front of people. I couldn't do it. So I said, I'm going to share my story. I'm going to find a way to share my story. And I'd met a guy at around the same time who was doing talks in schools, and, you know, and he'd inspired me to, I guess, well, I met him probably just after that. And I was like, this is what I need to do. And my workplace did something called the untold stories of the business. And I was working for a big company. I was working for Sky Betting and Gaming. And I like to talk about them because they were massive in my journey. And they did something called the untold stories of the business, and they allowed me to share my story at this work event. And there was like 300 people there. They were like, I didn't ask them. I seen it and someone approached me and I was like, oh God, I've got to do it. Because that's what I made a promise to myself to do it. And I sat up there and I spoke. And afterwards, two of the managers or directors actually took me into a room and they were like, you need to leave the business. And I was like, why? They're like, you need to do this. This is what you should be doing. You shouldn't be working here. Why are you working here when you should be doing this? Look at the difference you made in like 15 minutes. And they put me on a speaking course. They put me on a training course to become become an instructor for Mental Health First Aid England, or they helped me to get on the course, should I say? And they just said, get out and do what you're meant to be doing. And that was it, the start of the journey, which was probably about, back end of COVID, just coming out the other side of that. And yeah, the rest is like, it's been, incredible like that, from that moment, that very first talk to where we are today, changed everything.
Wow. Mate, there's so much there. Thank you for sharing that. Unbelievable, just incredible story. I just want to, one thing I want to, what was it about your partner, like your wife now, that made you open up to her at that first point?
I think it's because I didn't think we were going to be together. I didn't believe anyone would want me, and I'd opened up to her. And I think I gave her a bit, and she didn't look at me bad. She didn't tell me I was wrong. She was, I even said in our wedding speech, like, I think I said when I first met her, I thought she was a muppet. And, but in a good way, like she was just wild, funny, it was just, from the moment we met, it was just, there was something there. It was like, she, it's quite easy to go into a relationship and be like a bit coy and like, whereas everything we did was just funny, and she was making me laugh and she was making me smile when I didn't think I could smile. And yeah, I think that, we went on, I'm so grateful for her, and she'd come out of a long-term relationship, and maybe not everyone's going to have the strength to take on 3 kids, but I didn't have any strength, but lessons they taught me, and to see them now, and to be on this journey still with them, and must be doing something all right.
It's so beautiful. She's a beautiful.
She's just she's
a beautiful
she's
thing.
a guardian angel.
I guess I'm again, so much of the stuff I do, and we're talking about the stuff within this space and how we deal with our own struggles and our mental health. So I think ultimately for a lot of us, even when we're struggling, or not even when we're struggling, just people in general, we want to be truly seen and heard. Just describing how beautiful that is with your relationship, and from what I take from it, is that she just saw you for you, who you are.
Absolutely.
And accepted you for that. Because we've all got flaws, whatever they are, right? We've all got flaws. We've all got these things. But if people can see us, hear us, and accept those flaws, that's where relationships is one of the big things, one of the 5 pillars, right, for me. So know how important that is, whatever that relationship means, whether it's with a partner, whether it's with a friend, whether it's with a brother, mum, dad, whatever it is. Relationships are such an important part of our journey of life and success, right, of what that looks like. And you describing that, what a beautiful relationship, not only with her but with your kids as well, right?
And now it's like going through that whole journey with them, that in a system now that's, I guess, the same, but the world's changed around them, and to watch them struggle in that same way, but even more because there's 0 tolerance in some respects. It's tough. And I'm just glad that I can almost be, they can look at me and they can see that, we build and we can create our own paths. You don't have to stick and stick to this system, like you'll find your way in life, and we'll all forge a, they'll do great things. They doesn't have to be what everyone else is doing.
And how, like, for them to, well, actually, it makes me think about marquees and stuff. I just think for you to, one inspiration for them, right? To see, to have seen you and the struggles that you've been through, and then the journey you've decided to take, the choices you've made, right? And the choice you've made to be able to go on. Because like you said, you shared that dark period where you thought about ending it all, right? And not being in this world anymore.
Yeah.
And yet you chose to be here, and look at what you're doing. Look at what you're doing, how many people's lives you've saved by just being you and sharing your story, and for them to see that.
And they accepted me.
Yeah.
In a time where, they accepted 50% of me. And now they see probably 95% of me, which is like, it's just, I feel very lucky. And, they see the work I do, they see the opportunities I get, they see the fact I'm everywhere. Like, do you know what I mean? It's like taking me on the maddest journey. It wasn't like I didn't start off in like doing talks in a working man's club. It was just
talk to us about that, because you went, so from that conversation, that Sky Bet calling you in to go, this is what you need to go and do. What was that going out and getting that next talk? What was that? Talk to us about that. And
I don't like saying it in a way that, I don't want it to sound like I'm saying like check me out, but like my first talk was for Microsoft. And then it was for Burberry. And then it was
started small.
Yeah. Yeah. I was like, pay me in scarves and clothes. Give me a laptop.
Yeah.
And it was just, from there, I don't know, like I like to explain it as I was almost on the cusp of a wave. I was very, very relative because we'd come out of COVID, and if I'm honest, organizations could not keep up with the struggles that maybe people were faced with, and the changes to the world, and how everything looked very different. And then there's me who's saying, look, maybe it's not always about the medication and the therapy. Maybe it's about moving forwards, whether it's running or finding something that you really care about, reading, writing, bikes, whatever that may be. And I think, because it was running and exercise, and everyone wanted to teach people to do these things or get out and do these things, it was like huge. So I was like, I guess I was just on a bit of a cusp of a wave, and 1 minute I was doing those talks, and then the next minute I was over in Canada working like with the Canadian Premier League, delivering talks to like professional football players. And it makes me laugh because I'm like, what is actually happening here? And then I'm working with I'm working in like Vancouver and Whistler, and between, maybe been a little bit superstitious in tennis to OCD. When does it become a problem? Like bouncing the ball 3 times before they hit a shot, or playing with that same ball again. And some of the kids were saying how it started off like that, and then it crept into their sort of like evening things, and it's like I have to eat that same meal before I go to bed, or I have to check that. And then some of the kids even said they started to display some of the traits I was discussing. And it was interesting, learning about that sort of thing. And it's just, for me, it's been an amazing journey. And I think if there's anything that really sort of set me apart from the very, very beginning, was I came up with an idea, a concept with my talks that I didn't see anybody else doing. And whenever a corporate organization booked me to deliver a talk, included in that package, I made them sponsor a school. So that was included in every single booking. So
what made you want to do that?
Because of my journey starting when I was a kid, and schools do not have money. I was like, there's got to be something here where, every time I do a talk, they can sponsor a school, and it's brilliant. Like I did a talk for the NHS, and there's like 300 nurses in a room, and I'm like, you sponsor a school on the back of these talks. Everyone puts a name in the hat. We pull the name out, and then I can invite the director of nursing, and I can invite the person whose kid's school it is to come and watch me talk, and they can see that the impact isn't just that 300 people in the room. It's 400 kids in a school, and, I co-brand my slides, put all the branding on there from the company that have sponsored it. So it's like, I talk about them in the talk, the importance of why they got me into their school and why it's important, their workplace, and why it's important that I'm now in this school. It's like the perfect thing, and it's enabled me, to actually, I've been able to deliver talks in over 140 schools, speak to probably 30, 35, 40,000 kids now over the last, 4 years alone. And it's been probably the best thing I could have done. And then I've built little concepts on the back of it. Now I run sort of social, like CSR projects for organizations. Like, they'll book me for a week or 2 weeks to do something, give back to their local community, and I'll go over to different cities and do stuff like that, and they love it because they can see firsthand. It's brilliant, like, what a lot of these organizations do, but sometimes they don't see it. They might plant trees and things like that, and you can see what the impact they're having. But to be able to to run a project for a week and see that I can get through 10 schools, reach nearly 5,000 kids potentially, like, it's unbelievable. And it's opened up so many doors into, like, that world. And everything I do now, like, the dream one day would be with what I've just finished building. I've got a learning management system now for learner experience platform for corporate organizations, where we incorporate all of that lived experience in it. We've, through talks throughout the year, everything's broadcasted through the platform. We've got, like, an app, partner with an incredible company called Thrive that have, wanted to help me build, probably the best mental health platform we could possibly build. And also have all the things that I guess a lot of companies and organizations need. You've got all the CPD accredited learning in there. We've got videos, we've got, like, subject matter expertise from us. I've got 9 speakers that work closely with me that, I've built over the last couple of years that are, touch on subjects I don't, eating disorders. I've got an incredible lad who was born a girl and now identifies as a boy, talks about his journey through the transition, how difficult it was, but then how he's found himself. And someone who talks about addiction. I've got a girl who had an eating disorder. She amassed nearly 10 million views on her YouTube channel. I've got a girl who's a speaker who's Sikh, and she talks about that journey culturally, like, and she's been shortlisted for Sikh of the Year. She's spoken in Downing Street. Just bought this. I've got musicians. I've got people who've been on the X Factor who've now turned their life around, and, like, literally unbelievable sort of advocates and lived experience experts, and all built into this one platform where we can offer this real life support. But also, the big thing about the platform, I guess, is making it so it's not just about us, it's about you. The platform isn't a platform where you just white label it and it's your business. The platform is a collaborative platform. It's designed for any organization, but I guess predominantly the reason why I set out and did it in the first place is not every sort of organization with 100 or 50 staff would be able to afford to get 9 speakers in throughout the year. So at a fraction of the cost, you get access to them all year round. You can watch the talks that are broadcasted live through the platform. You can see it online, and you can be a part of this community. But ultimately, the long-term goal, shouldn't happen too long-term, it should be in the next couple of months, as we build this community of people on this platform. We want to hear their stories. We want to hear, what did our story inspire you to speak out about? And, is there someone in there who's autistic who has never really spoken about it? How do we bring them into the mix and allow them to share their story through the platform, and then bring other communities together through that? And, we'll run panel discussions. We'll have experts on there that's, from different organizations who are leading the way in well-being, and we can learn from one another. Like, for me, it's all about collaboration. It's all about people. That's what's got me here. I'm not just a single person. It's like, this is just people believing in me, giving me opportunities, and I just think that needs to keep going. That'll be my way of paying forwards. It's always, how do I create more opportunities to create more conversations and more stories, and that's where we make the bigger impact, I think, personally.
And you're so right. Like, I think there's so much I've shared with my own experience is exactly that, right? There's that brilliant quote by Maya Angelou, and she says, If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Love
Right,
that.
it's brilliant, isn't it? And I listen to that and I just go, it's exactly. And I look at where I am now and the things I've done, and there's no question about it. Without community, without the people around me supporting and being there, I wouldn't be here. Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't have got through them dark periods of life, whether that's through family, through friends, through the business community, whatever it is. We need to do that. We need to have people around us. And actually, I love the ethos of, from your point of view, the impact that you can have by the mission's bigger
When we're
than,
together.
yeah. Well,
And it's
then
much
it's
bigger
not.
than
It's,
me.
yeah, it's big. It's big. Like when we look at where we are with this mental health crisis, which is a crisis, right? We are in a critical stage with what's going on in the suicide rates and mental illness. It's massive, right? But actually, if we can all come together and we all collaborate in some way and all got a mission and help each other in a way, maybe even if it is that we change this little corner of the world and that creates a little ripple effect that maybe goes a bit further and we
I love
have
that,
an
and I
impact.
totally agree.
Yeah.
And I think for me, whenever I'm doing anything, I'm delivering these talks, like, or I'm in a podcast studio speaking to someone amazing like yourself. Like, I always have to be really clear on like what's my biggest achievements like over the last sort of 15 years, because people want to hear about the businesses you've worked in, they want to hear about the impact you've had, but going back to that point briefly about the learning to become comfortable feeling uncomfortable, it was never about the hardest thing. It was always about the little things. It was about living, finding ways to live. And I've got a picture on my screensaver, and this is like what it really means. Like, to me, this is a picture of me and my dad going out for a beer for the first time in 10 years. Right. And ultimately, like, this is what the work I'm doing has enabled me to do. Like, I couldn't sit in a pub with my dad properly for 10 years and enjoy anything. I couldn't even be in a pub. I couldn't be amongst my friends. Like, I miss my best mates, like stag do. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, and I wanted to be there, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't go there. Like, I couldn't do it. I think I'll probably always regret it. But like, he understood because he understood me. But I've missed all sorts of things, birthdays, big events like this, not allowed enable me to do. And ultimately, like, what really matters isn't about all that, like the great success of, like, I mean, it's brilliant. It's played a massive part in my journey, but it's the fact that my mates can ring me now. They can say, "Do you want to go for a beer?" And I can say, "Yeah, I'm coming." And I can go when I don't need to have a beer. They don't care if I drink or not. I'm there. I'm amongst it. I'm with them. Or my missus can say, "We can go for a meal." There was times where I was like so vigorously writing stuff in my phone that for years, we couldn't even sit in a restaurant. We tried and we'd just leave. Like, I can go places with my kids. I can do things. I can go to like boxing events and to football matches again. Do you know, like, these little things that most people take for granted? Like, these are the things that really mean the most. And it's, I think that's what I'm most grateful for now, because, like, I'm living a life now that I never thought I would again. And I just believe anybody can do the same if they just find something.
Mate, so I mean, there's for me, like the whole essence. We start with this the question on the podcast: how do we define success, right? And there's so much of a narrative out there in society that tells us about, we've got to be here, we've got to be there, you should be able to do this. This is the life that actually is mapped out, and this is the structure. Again, back to structure and where we should be in that journey of life, right? And actually, one of the other pillars is about presence, right? Being present, grateful for where we are right now, and actually listening to how beautiful you've just articulated that and shared your story in a way that you go, what a brilliant message for people, anyone listening, wherever we are, in whether you've got OCD or you've not, whether you're struggling or you're not, wherever we are in life, just trying to take hold of those getting up every day, practicing a bit of gratitude and just being grateful for the small things in life
Yeah.
and where we are right now and what we've got around us right now. Not we need something more. Need the narrative and the stuff we get programmed and thrown at us every day on social media and everything in life, but just going, actually, there's where we are right now is enough. And I think one of the caveats I really put with this, and this is something I've learned on my, because people will hear me talk about success, and I'll say, look, but if we're trying to create that world then where people are like that and they go, I'm just enough as I, no, does that stop us? Will we just create this mediocre life for people? Well, like, I listen to you talk with your inspiration and passion. You're not someone sitting opposite me who is not ambitious. Look at the stuff you've already achieved and what you are achieving and what you're going to go on to achieve, because you've got the ambition, but it's all done with purpose. And we can caveat for me, we can caveat the thing of going, I'm grateful, I'm happy for where I am right now. But it doesn't mean I'm not going to go and strive and
I'm going to keep going because
yeah.
I know what I need to do. But it took me to, make a change. Like I could have stuck like I was. I had to, you have to do, we talk a lot about hope, don't we? And it's in life.
Yeah.
But you can't just be hopeful. You have to make a change, I believe, to really be able to sort of step out of that, whatever you're going through. You have to do something. You can remain hopeful, but you have to, in my opinion, it takes action. Like, you have to do something. You have to make some form of change. And, mine was that run that day that led to that decision to speak, that led to that decision to now have the opportunity to travel the world to speak. But ultimately, everything that's happening, like now, like I wake up in the morning and I'm like, I can't wait to see what happens today. And I'm not better. Like, OCD's there all the time. I've always got these things going on. I've got to manage it day in, day out. But I know what I need to do to manage it, and I understand it better than I ever have. And I'm just determined to not let it catch me again. And you just every day it's going to be there. I think I'll always have OCD for all my life. I think I'll always probably have it on a level where it could potentially be very severe, but you've got to try and understand it. I've learned to understand it better. Diagnosis of ADHD in later life, the medication helped me. All these things, like little things, have massively helped. But the things that I do daily are so different to anybody else. And, it's like every single day I do a set of things. I get up, pint of water by my bed, like my kit's by my bed. There's no choice other than to get into that kit and drink that pint of water and get out that door. I run. As soon as I open my eyes, I have a 4-minute ice cold shower. I've done that for 2 years. Game changer with my ADHD or whatever's going on. The mixture between the battle with ADHD and OCD in my mind, possibly they're so entwined. I do Duolingo every day, trying to learn Italian. I write a journal. I write a diary. And I read 10 pages of a book. And I've done that now for the last, I keep adding things in. It's really frustrating because I'm like, there's not enough time.
I'm not going to be able to build a business. I've got
these are things that are for me that have just massively helped, because I couldn't read a book. I couldn't read a book for 20 years because my mind would not allow me to read a book. I'd start again, have to start again. My OCD, everything. I couldn't focus on it. I couldn't learn. I couldn't take any information in. And these are just little tiny things that are like tiny changes. The journaling massively helps me realize how lucky I am now every single day, and how fortunate I am to have the people around me, the support, my wife, my kids, my family, mum and dad, my brother's sister, my cousin, everyone like who's there to support me. And just these tiny little things like every single day that make me realize just that life really is actually worth living. And there is a place for me in a world that I don't think I believe there was. And I think so many young people will probably feel the same. And you've got to remember that, school might be difficult. I was lucky. I knew everybody. Not everyone goes through that same school like I do, where you're a popular kid. Some people don't have those people. They don't have the people around them. But you will find your people in life. Like, you know, it may not be in school. Schools need to be set up better to support those kids, or there needs to be something in place. But yeah, just got to keep going.
Mate, thank you so much. What a absolute pleasure and a privilege it's been to meet you. I feel so grateful actually that you've come into my life. I feel like that this is the start of our journey. I don't know what it looks like, but I'm confident that our paths are gonna. There's gonna be some paths across some more, and we're gonna do some more stuff together. But I'm just so grateful for you coming on and your honesty and vulnerability and sharing everything you have done today. Now, for me, one of the things that why I love doing this so much and why I will probably do it till the day I'm not here anymore is that just by you doing what you've done and sharing how you have, that even if just one person listens and actually it gives people hope. You mentioned that before, hope, right? And that's sometimes all we need. It's just that little bit of hope that actually that can be what I can do to change. And I can just take that first, like the things you highlighted, just taking that first step, whatever that looks like, whether it's going for a run, whether it's going for a swim, whether it's having a cold shower, whatever it is, those little things, just taking that first step is something so important, and it can save people's lives, and you sharing your story is saving people's lives, and I'm so grateful for that. So thank you, my friend.
I'm grateful for you. Thank you.
We have a closing tradition on this podcast.
Okay.
These are my storytelling cards. Let me give them a little shuffle. So you're going to choose a card, any card. It's not a magic trick. Just pass it back to me. I'll read it out. Okay. Okay. How do you, the 10-year thing, how do you measure your own success now compared to 10 years ago?
Well, how random's that?
You picked it.
Do you need me to answer that?
I think just listen to this podcast.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, 100%.
Mate.
I think just it's a very different story now.
Yeah.
And I know I'm going to come across a fair few more hurdles in my life, but I just feel like nothing can catch me now like it did before, and I've got to keep moving forwards. The running enables me to do that day in, day out, and keep talking.
Amazing, mate.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, mate. You're a legend. And as they say, is a wrap.